Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the SYLBOURNE Show. And today I'm joined by Patrick Vernon. Patrick is the founder of Every Generation Media and 100 Great Black Britons, which develops education programs, publications, and films on cultural heritage and family history. Patrick was made pioneer of the Nation for Cultural History by the Queen in 2003. He's leading expert on African and Caribbean genealogy in the UK. Patrick, good morning in lovely Westminster.
Yeah, good morning to you, Selborne, yes.
Good. No, I just wanted to actually have a chat with you as to Patrick Vernon, the man. I've always seen you at the different Windrush factors. I saw you recently, not physically, but at the Mary Seacole when they had the unveiling of the statue.
Yeah.
But tell us a bit more about what you do. Because Patrick, one of the things that you and I know, which sometimes is lacking in the community, is actually chronicling the path of some of our generals, which are sometimes unsung.
Yes.
And I classify you as a general. So can you tell us a bit more of your background and what leads you up to this point?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think like with most people, we do different things. So obviously I do a lot of work around history and heritage. That's more of a passion, which I've developed over the last particularly 15 years. By developing a number of websites. So my first website I launched was in 2002. That was Every Generation, and I did that because when I was working as a senior manager in the NHS. I was doing mentoring. I was mentoring young black boys in Hackney, where I lived, and also in Brent when I was working for the health service. And what I found out mentoring, and it didn't really matter if they came from a single parent family background or they had their parents or grandparents. What was quite clear that young black boys didn't know much about their own family history, didn't know much about the history of the countries where their parents came from, the grandparents came from, and they actually didn't know much of what was happening around the black historic experience in the UK.
Yes.
And I think my view was that actually without like the Marcus Garvey saying, a country, a person without history or heritage is rootless.
Yes.
And I felt that I believe that one of the consequences of that rootlessness has impact on achievement, on learning, on aspirations, and also it might have an impact on how young people may make the wrong life decisions and get caught up in stuff, particularly around the issue around gangs and stuff like that, which is a big issue which has an impact within the community. So I believe that if we have information available, along with workshops, events, more products and services to promote the black historic experience, not just in the UK, but internationally, that might instill confidence, pride, and focus.
Yes.
And that's the key. That's what things I do around the work at Every Generation for the last 14 years. So I've developed a number of websites. Every Generation, which is the first website to focus on family history, black family history, Caribbean, African family history in the UK. Then in 2003, I launched 100 Great Black Britons website. I launched that because the BBC did a major programme called 100 Great Britons back in 2002. The BBC spent loads of money on this. They had TV programmes, they had a national poster campaign up and down the country, and they were trying to find the greatest Britain of all time. So it was like a public vote, there were lots of events happening, and they had the final list of 100. There was not one person of African, Caribbean, Asian, Chinese
In that list?
in that list at all. The only person on that list was Freddie Mercury,
Really?
the lead singer of Queen, who was born in Zanzibar. He was the only person on that list. So at the time when the BBC announced this list, and then they wanted the public to vote for their top 10, there was an outcry. Actually, not just within the black community and the BME community, there was an outcry. Irish people complained, so there weren't enough Irish people on the list. Scottish people complained. A lot of feminists complained there weren't enough women on the list. And so anyway, I decided to do a counter campaign to create an alternative list, but this list highlighting the black presence going back 1,000 years in Britain, from the likes of Septimus Severus, who was the leader who he rebuilt Aiden's Wall, and actually he is still the only person in history, a black person in history to run this country, because he was basically the emperor for the UK, the protector of the UK, to stop the Scots coming over the borders. So we haven't, and that tells you, after all those centuries, we're still trying. We haven't even got a black prime minister yet.
That is good, Patrick, and that's very powerful. So tell me now, how effective has it been so far with the work that you're doing, and especially highlighting the great black icons?
So when I did 100 Great Black Britons, I launched it in October in 2003, 1st of October, at the start of Black History Month. And I spent, it took me 6 to 9 months to design the website, to do the research work. I was able to get a researcher, Dr. Angelina Osborne now. I got a web designer and a graphic designer, and we've worked together as a team to design the website, do research all the bios. I got some. I have to acknowledge Nubian Jack, because Nubian Jack was very helpful at the time, because he gave some ideas and pointers for me, and we pulled together a list of 100 black people. I said, looking at Septimus Severus, around about AD 300, right up to Miss Dynamite. Which shows the breadth of that contribution. And then we wanted people to vote online and choose their greatest black Briton of all time. I approached Lee Jasper and Rosemary Moodoo and Ken Livingstone. They supported the campaign. We actually launched the campaign at the GLA in the living room in October 2003 to an audience of about 300 people, and we used that event to actually do our own opinion poll to find out who greatest Black Briton was at the time. And then when I did a joint press release with Ken Livingstone promoting the 100 Great Black Britons, and the result of his support intervention, that made it into a national and international story, because all the major newspapers did double-page stories on the campaign, double-page features on who was on the list. You had the likes of the Telegraph, the Mail, even the Sun, as well as the Guardian and the Mirror, all did major stories, and the campaign ran for 3 months. And then halfway through the campaign, I was approached by the BBC, and the BBC asked me to. I had a meeting with the controller of BBC Two at the time, Jane Root, and they said, and she said, she kind of defended. She said, "Oh, actually, it's really great that you're doing this campaign and you highlighted black achievements, and it's unfortunate that we didn't feature anyone on the BBC official list." And so that's not good enough, because the BBC, we pay the taxes. You're a public educator, and somehow you should have made it your business to educate and inform the British public. So there's been a black presence going back 1,000 years. So anyway, to cut long story short. The BBC made a TV programme. Originally, it was going to be based around 100 Great Black Britons, but in the end, they came to a view that based on audience research, there wasn't enough interest in having a TV programme looking at black British history. This is in 2003. Ironically, in 2016, you've got David Olusogun. He's going to do a 2-part TV special in November, looking at the black presence in the UK. So sadly,
when is that?
In November this year. So
David
Olusogun.
Who's David Olusogun?
He's a TV. He's a historian and TV presenter. He did a program recently looking at the slave trade and the legacy and the wealth that was created. And he did a program about the First World War and the African Asian contribution. So it's taken the BBC 16 years now to decide to do a proper program looking at the black presence in the UK. And I think that's probably one of the consequences of every generation of the 100 Great Black Britons.
Well, that's very interesting. It took the BBC so long to do it, but that wouldn't have happened without you kicking it, or people kicking it at the same time.
Other people, not just me, but other people. But obviously, one of the obvious kind of impacts of 100 Great Black Britons was Mary Seacole was voted Greatest Black Briton of all time.
That was the result.
That was the result, and I actually announced the results live on Channel 4 News. That was the level of interest at the time in 2004 when the results were announced, and that helped the Mary Seacole Appeals Committee, because they had already started the process of trying to raise £500,000 for the statue. So obviously Mary Seacole being the winner, that helped to raise the profile. And 12 years later, the statue was unveiled. not far from here actually.
Yes.
St Thomas Hospital.
Just by understand.
Yeah, so I think, but also not only that, National Portrait Gallery acquired a picture of Mary Seacole, which is in the Victorian Gallery, and that was a result of the campaign, because the chief executive at the time standing there was actually interviewed by Henry Bonsu that he made that commitment.
Now, you were a counsellor in Hackney for a season of time. Tell me, what was the journey like, and what you've learned, and the challenges, and how to encourage also other black persons to get involved in politics.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been involved in politics from the time I was a student at university. So, I mean, I joined the Labour Party when I was about 18, 19 actually. When I was, I think, just before when I was doing my A levels. So I think I've always been involved.
Are you a Corbyn man?
Yes, I do support Jeremy Corbyn. I've known Jeremy for many years, and I think he's had a harsh time the way he's been treated in the media. Obviously, he's new on the job as leader of a party, so obviously he's still getting things and working things to get it right. But you've got to give him a chance and opportunity to deliver, and I think he will do with the right support. So I've always been involved in the Labour Party for many years, but not just the Labour Party. I've always been involved in community activism as well. I've always balanced my community activism with my Labour Party activism. So, and then because of my career, because of the various jobs I did, particularly working in the NHS and running a number of charities and organisations, I couldn't be as politically active as I could do, because obviously, you know, there's kind of rules and regulations around about political activity. However, I did decide I wanted to become a councillor, and in 2006 I got elected as a Labour councillor in a ward called Queen's Ward, which basically covers parts of Dalston and London Fields. And I was councillor for 8 years. I stepped down 2 years ago, and so as well as a councillor, you do casework. You have to attend key meetings, like council meetings. You have to attend your own political grouping meetings, and then obviously you do casework in the community, and you have surgeries. On top of that, I was a chair of the Health Scrutiny Committee. Because my professional background is in health and social care, and then I was a play champion for Hackney as well, promoting play, and because we had funding to develop new play facilities in the borough, which I was quite involved in as well, and I chaired the play partnership board. So in terms of being a councillor, I found it very rewarding. You have to make a commitment. If you want to do the job seriously, you have to because it involves evening, some daytime, but mainly evening and weekends, and you have to put the shift in, because I think a lot of the public are very cynical of all politicians, whether you're MPs or councillors, and I think it's important that you have to demonstrate, because of the cynicism of politics and voting, especially in a place like in Hackney and Dalston, where I was a councillor, there's lots of people are not sure about councillors and politicians. So you've got to do the extra legwork to convince them that when you're doing the casework, when you reply to letters, when you're dealing with issues, you are dealing with it, so people can see that they can help you. I think I was quite successful in doing my casework. I can remember one election year where I helped a particular family around a housing problem. I helped them to get rehoused, and the family came out on election day knocking on doors on my behalf. And I didn't expect that, but that was their way of showing gratitude of me helping them out as well. I think we have a major issue of underrepresentation. We haven't got enough black people as councillors, never least MPs. There are about 47,000 councillors nationally, but actually if you look at places, London we're doing okay, it could be better, but actually if you go outside London, it's actually quite woeful. In Wolverhampton, there's only one black councillor.
Wolverhampton is very mixed.
And Wolverhampton is my hometown, one black councillor. A place like Derby, hardly no black councillors. Nottingham, about 2 or 3.
Manchester also has the same problem as well.
Manchester probably has one. Trafford's got one. Huddersfield, there's now one. Leeds are about 1 or 2. So actually, the issue of black representation outside London is really, really important, really critical, because councillors are a key bridge between the community and influencing what happens in the town hall around decisions around housing, education, environment, a whole regeneration. Councillors' roles are quite important in that regard.
Now, that is important, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, and mothers and fathers, you need to encourage your children to get involved in politics. Now, Patrick, we've got so much short time now. I just want to talk on the the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Theresa May, the Prime Minister, has actually supported it. And I've heard Simon Woolley on the news also championing the support for this recent report and the recommendation. In a couple minutes, can you sort of give us an overview of this before we wrap up?
Sure, yeah. So Britain is a signatory to a whole range of United Nations conventions and bodies. So every 5 years, the United Nations do a country report. They look at a country and look at issues around equalities. And they make recommendations which they hope that nation states will take seriously and implement. So the report that came out over the weekend by the United Nations Convention is based on submissions that were made in Geneva. Yes. So the British government, representing all the government departments, formally made a formal submission. You had the Runnymede Trust, which a well-respected think tank on race equality. They pulled together submissions from a range of race equality organisations, bodies in the UK, to say this is what we think the issues around race is, and then obviously it's like a committee style whereby the committee, the UN committee, will cross-examine, ask questions, and then produce a report. The report in itself is nothing new because the report a week ago, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who also made a formal submission, highlighted that there is no race equality strategy in Britain. The last strategy was on the Labour government in 2010, and basically because there's no strategy and the Equality Act of 2010 has not been fully enacted and fully implemented, and actually in many ways you can argue that the Equality Act has been downgraded, it means that there's no effective way of dealing around issues of racial inequality in Britain today. So that was one of the major concerns which was highlighted in the CERD report by the UN. The second concern was post-Brexit, that they felt that the campaign on both sides actually incited racial hatred, which has led to an increase in hate crime fivefold. So they were quite critical of politicians. They were quite critical of politicians in Britain for using the issue of immigration and race around the whole EU debate. So they were very critical of that. Thirdly, they were quite critical of the government's current strategy called Prevent, which is targeting the Muslim community around fundamentalism. They feel that this is a violation of human rights, and also the nature of the targeting is counterproductive and it's not demonstrating any evidence that's led to anything around tackling issues around Islamic State. But one of the other key recommendations I think your viewers will find quite interesting is the UN in 2015 declared the decade of African descent. They recognised the UN, as this came out of the Durban Conference in 2001, which recognised that slavery is a crime against humanity. And as a result of the Durban Conference and a whole range of initiatives over the last 10-15 years, that led to this point where the UN recognised that if you're of African descent on this planet, whether you're in the Caribbean, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East, South America, you are more likely to be discriminated. You're more likely to have your life chances are much less compared to the population.
Can I just come in there? Do you think then this strengthens the case for reparation?
Yeah, well, that is part of that conversation as well, because the UN decade, even though it's not explicit about the issues of reparation, it recognises that slavery is a crime against humanity. And if you look at previous legal precedent, when any forms of crimes against humanity is recognised, there was reparation, always issue. So if you look at issues of what happened to Jewish people in the Holocaust, that was recognised as a crime against humanity. What happened in Japan and Germany. So there have always been recognition. If there's a crime against humanity, it follows, then there's a conversation around reparation. Not necessarily about money, but the whole conversation around reparations. Unfortunately, that's not been recognised for people of African descent to date.
Well, Patrick, I want to thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, there will not be enough time to actually talk about this, so we're going to keep the conversation going on Facebook, on Twitter, on all different medias. But Patrick, before I go, I always like to ask any of my guests, like, what is their favorite quote or mantra? You must be a man who actually is out there championing the waters, going through the different negative factors, we won't touch on Wolverhampton bit with trying to ban it from Wolverhampton. But when you're going through those times, what are some of the key word or your favorite quote that pushes you through, that keeps you going?
Oh God, you got me on the spot now. There's lots of quotes.
Yeah. Give us one, yeah.
But I think one quote I like is "No man's an island,"
Yes.
which means obviously man in the general sense of referring to everyone, but I think that you need to have a support network,
Yes.
where it's friends, family, acquaintances, work colleagues, people that you might see once a year. It's having a network of people that support that value what you do,
Yes.
recognise what you do, and support you. So all the stuff I've done over the years around every generation.
Yes.
I've never done it on my own. I've
Yes.
worked with teams.
Teamwork.
It's been complete teamwork, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Patrick, I want to thank you so much. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the SYLBOURNE Show Network. And of course, to find out more about Patrick Vernon, do subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Facebook media, Twitter, social media network. And of course, thank you so much again, and see you again. Hi, thanks for watching our video. If you like what you see, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and share and like. And don't forget to comment, but first subscribe.